Everyone, and welcome back to another world-building video for the Explorer's Guide to Ravion. In this video, I was going to show you a little bit more about some of the regions within the Lebet Empire. The first of which that we're going to look at here is the Stone Teeth. The Stone Teeth is kind of this collection of mountains that border the northeastern parts of the nation. These tall mountains are capped with frozen layers of ice and snow that make them an extremely treacherous landscape. Ultimately, people don't really traverse this landscape, don't bother going through that mountain range, except for the few developed roadways that they have between basic settlements. They have that basic, newly established, infrastructure for transportation. But in all reality, and we'll take a look at the map here, these mountains stretch this whole northern piece. Right between here with the Mist Keep, there's the very tip of the mountains, one of the most southern tips of it, up by the ocean here. It kind of loops its way up and north and then down and east. And everything that's beyond this mountain range, which is already relatively dangerous to travel on its own, is actually kind of nothing. On the other side, you can kind of see it right here. But on the other side of the mountain range, there isn't anything present. It's just tundra. And eventually it just kind of becomes less and less of an incentive to travel through this region and through these mountains to get to what amounts to a pile of nothing. And so they have just kind of, for cities like Black Hill and Gray Meadow and Black Hold, they end up having some very clear, we have some basic infrastructure for roads, but it's going to be a challenge. So pretty much all the way down from Brittle Scar and then following the mountain range is the region in and of itself. This region is for the most part just following the mountains, and the culture there was, before the great unification of the Lebet Empire, extremely influenced by this mountain, and they kind of had this mountain culture. Before they were united, they ended up having different kind of tribal groups that would go and live at the base of the mountains, have basic worship to different parts or spirits that were present within the area, and then at the same time hunt and trade and do some basic cooperative things. But for the most part, they were individualized settlements or small colonies. Over time, what you ended up having is a lot of the people come through for the Great Lebet Collective that eventually assimilated those tribes in an effort to become stronger and limit their own weak points, even if those weak points were at the very edge of a mountain that was at their backs. So, if we take a look at some of the regional notes that I have here, the Stone Teeth are really not that highly populated. It's extremely cold. The elevation proves to be difficult for all but the hardiest of people to survive. They thrive within the winter timberlands of the Stone Teeth. That's where people actually tend to live. Compare this with the historic trend of mysterious disappearances, is kind of made for an extremely dangerous landscape for civilized life. So, going back to the map for a second, the mountain range is kind of where you see a lot of this. There are gaps at the very edge of the mountain range where these cities are that are more of a highland timberland type area. You have a lot of cold or frozen forests that allows for actual survival. And so people that live there at this point in time tend to live within just those forested areas and to some extent avoid the mountain entirely. There is also a pretty great number of disappearances that has been coming through from the Lebet Empire, but specifically this area is the area that's affected. Majority of the time, the area specifically around kind of between Black Hill and Gray Meadow, this area tends to be the area that people most commonly disappear from. And while these mysterious disappearances are occurring across the entirety of the Lebet Empire to some extent, this is the epicenter of all of that. Black Hill and Gray Meadow are the most potentially dangerous areas for that specifically. The typical denizens of the Stone Teeth are giants and other massive creatures like dragons, ogres, and other wintry style rocks, the really big birds. The highest peaks of the mountaintops prove too much for many creatures to survive, but the timberlands offer the primary landscape of hospitable territory for smaller communities of people and non-giant animals. Basically, what that would mean is kind of exactly what it is there's a lot of different things that live in the mountains, but not a lot of people live in the mountains, which makes it extremely dangerous for those people to even go into the mountains from an environmental standpoint, but also from a ecology standpoint and other community standpoint. Giants can end up being more dangerous even if they are not a combative force and a peaceful force, or even just a wary force. They can prove to be extremely dangerous just on virtue of their size alone. And other creatures within there, like dragons, ogres, and rocks, are also just inherently dangerous to some extent on their own. Some more than others, but inherently dangerous in the right that they exist. So, that's kind of all we've got on the Stone Teeth so far. But we'll talk about in the next video, we'll talk about another region, the Green Hollow Plains. Kind of get a little bit of a different vibe from that area than we have with the Stone Teeth. But that'll be it for now. Thank you all for watching, and remember, be good to one another. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.